All right, guys, we're going to talk a little bit about percent yield. Now, when looking at percent yield, the reason why we figure it out is because usually not all of the product possible is actually formed, meaning when we're making a chemical reaction, we actually do it in the lab, we don't get the specific amount that we're asking for. We usually get just a little bit less because there's just some error in our procedure. Now, to calculate percent yield, we need two things. We need our theoretical yield, which our theoretical yield is the maximum amount of product possible. Okay, and we do that by we find theoretical yield by calculating, or it is calculated from the limiting reactant. Okay, so it's calculated, we get our theoretical yield. Now our actual yield is what is actually measured in the lab. It's the amount that is formed in the lab reaction. And it's normally always less than or equal to the theoretical yield. It's normally less because we usually never do an experiment completely perfect. There's always just a little bit of experimental error. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's look at an example question on how we're going to work it out. Now in our example question it says if 35.0 grams of C2H2 reacts with an excess of Br2 and 125 grams of the product is recovered, what is the percent yield? So in looking at this, what we're going to do is first we're going to box what we're dealing with. We're dealing with grams of C2H2 and 125 grams of our product which is recovered. Okay, and it wants to know what is the percent error. Now, when we look at 125 grams of the product is recovered, you can put is recovered, is formed, is measured. No matter how you put it, we got to know that this is what we're actually figuring out in the lab. We have 125 grams that we got in the lab. Now, we started with 35.0 grams of C2H2. Which, when looking at this, what that means is that this C2H2 is our reactant. Okay, and remember that percent yield, yield means product. Okay, so we're trying to figure out a product. Well, here we know our actual yield. If we're looking at our equation where percent yield equals our actual yield divided by our theoretical yield times 100. We have our actual, so we just need to calculate our theoretical. Okay, and so we're going to use our 35.0 grams of C2H2, and that is our limiting because we know that this is an excess, so therefore this is limiting. So we're going to start with our 35.0 grams of C2H2 and convert it into grams of our product. So it's going to be a gram to gram conversion. Okay, so let's box the two things we're dealing with. We're dealing with C2H2 and CHBr2, CHBr2. Okay, and we check and make sure, and this guy would be balanced if we just put a 2 right there. So we see what we're dealing with, we box what we're dealing with, we write down our mole ratio. So I know that 1 mole of C2H2 equals 1 mole of CHBr2, CHBr2. Okay, and that's our mole ratio. Now it says grams of CH2 and grams of our product, so we need the molar mass of both these guys. And so we figure out their molar mass, and I know that 1 mole of C2H2 equals 26.04 grams of C2H2. And I also calculated that 1 mole of my product equals 345.64 grams of my product. Okay, and I'm just putting product to save a little time and space. Okay, so we have our 3 conversion factors here. Let's go ahead and set it up and work it out. So we're starting with 35.0 grams of our reactant, our limiting reactant. We want to figure out our amount of our product. So we see that we have grams of C2H2, it matches up with this. So we're going to put our 26.04 grams of C2H2 on the bottom, and we put the other half on top, and we put 1 mole of C2H2 on the top. And I keep going because I want to get grams of my product, and I see that those units will cancel as I go. And I'm left with 1 mole of C2H2, and I see that I'm going to use my mole ratio here. I'm going to have 1 mole of C2H2 equals 1 mole of my product. And I see that those units will cancel, and I'm left with my last conversion factor of 1 mole of product equals 345.64 grams of my product. And what I'm going to go ahead and do here is I'm going to go ahead and multiply the top out. So I'm going to go 35 times 1 times 345.6, and that is 64. And then I'm going to divide that all by my bottom, which is 26.04 times 1 times 1, which should give me an answer of 464 point, and we're going to say round it to 2 decimal places, 57. Okay, and that's grams of my product. Now, specifically, we calculated this out. We did math to figure it out. So this is my theoretical yield. So I have my 125, which is my actual yield. Here's my theoretical yield. So to find my percent yield, all I do is I do 125 divided by my 464.57, and then I multiply it by 100, and I should get an answer of 26.91%.